I want to start off with this quote by Gary Halem, saying the world is becoming more turbulent each day. There are changes that's happening every day. Um, our COVID-19, which was recently, changes in technologies and organizations. The organization demographics are changing. The earth is changing, streams, rivers, just everything. So we're in a constant state. We can't turn on the TV for over 30 minutes without hearing of a tragedy that has occurred. I am Dr. Jessica, and I help people Jessica Blaylock. People call me Dr. Jessica. I help leaders and emerging leaders who are struggling with anxiety and stress. I help them manage through stress and help provide strategies to help them calm down. I conduct training, coaching, and consulting in various organizations. And I have been doing this for over 20 years. So I'm excited to share with you. This is my first live, so I haven't done this before. So I'm excited to share with you some of the best practices I've learned from experiences, from clients, and from my education to help people manage and grow through turbulent times. Today, we will discuss how did we get here, and we will review the 5 keys to activate your best self. I have been, I started doing these trainings on turbulence in the past year, and I thought, or I would think, as COVID even decreased, that the need would be less, but it seems like it's even more. So that's why I decided to do this live to help additional people um, implement strategies every day into their life that will help you lead or manage through change. All right. So how did we get here? VUCA is a term that describes condition of war, and it's created by the U.S. Army of War. And they would describe, well, what happens in within war. What are some of the situations, or what's a certain uncertainty, complexity, what goes on. However, leaders within organizations have recently adapted this VUCA strategy as part of their strategies because there's so many changes going on. From volatile, things are changing, going up and down. Uncertainty leads to ambiguity. You're not sure about what's happening next. Complex systems, new technologies, the global environment. So things are always changing. One question we have here is, well, what are some of your um, people who are experiencing burnout? What are some of the symptoms that you guys may be having? Looking in, and you can type on the LinkedIn chat or in the on LinkedIn. I'm looking on LinkedIn. I'm also looking on YouTube and Facebook as well. So, what are some of your challenges? Okay, just sending out a note. All right, so let's continue. So much challenges that I've seen and for working with people is sometimes people are exhausted. People are disengaged at work. People are confused. There are just a lot of changes. Travis said disengaged. Right. because your mind is focused on other things. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, well, what happens? What causes you to even go there? And you have to look into neuroscience research to determine, well, what's happening during the brain. So there's a term called amygdala hijacked. I'm not sure if you guys have heard this term, but it was coined by Daniel Goleman, who did a lot or does a lot of work with emotional intelligence research. And the amygdala is a part of your brain that regulates the flight or fight response that we all have, which is totally normal. And it stops us from making good decisions. And it since it regulates the flight or fight response, is like, are you gonna run or are you gonna stay here and fight? As a result of that amygdala being hijacked, it disables the cortex. And the cortex is the part of the brain that um, provides you with to help you to be more curious. It'll help you make great or better decisions. However, when your amygdala is out of whack, it's hijacked, you can't use that creative part of your brain. So you can't really do the turbulence study or helping people develop without, really knowing how that body and how your brain works. And also with the amygdala, sometimes people may do things at work and you think, that's not like him or her, or that's off. A lot of times we get into spaces where it's just difficult to manage, and people react, I guess, the best way they know how to. In this session, we're going to just talk about the 5 keys that can help you through this. And these keys have been, I'm going to skip that, based on a model. There's a model that I created in my book, Discover Yourself. And that Discover Yourself helps people lead from the inside out, helps people manage through stress, and helps people determine or discover, who they are. And so there are 5 main keys of this model. One is relaxation of the mind. The two is how to manage those emotions. And the next one is, who do you interact with? How do you interact with others? And who are your circles or influences? And do you have them? Because those are extremely important. It also talks about the physical body, how we take care of ourselves through diet, exercise, and stress, and what's your purpose? What are your important values? And so all of these things are important when developing oneself. All of these things help guide us in our lives. And there are a lot of different elements to this, but today those 5 steps, the 5 keys that we're going to talk about are 5 keys within this model that are very important, that I have seen throughout the years have helped move people from anxious to more curious and calm. All right. And the first, of course, is before we do anything, before we look at ourselves, before we try to manage our emotions, before we even try to go and talk to people, we have to relax our mind, and know, well, what do we do to relax our mind? And not relax our mind just, okay, in the morning, or I'm okay this week. Having strategies to help us kind of sort out things and deal with difficult situations, um, strategies that help us every day, even if we're okay. Because who knows what may happen tomorrow. And you want to make sure you're calm and clear at all times. The first key in relaxing of the mind is, of course, taking deep breaths throughout the day, especially under pressure. By taking these deep breaths, it helps lower your stress and anxiety. And it's important when you take your deep breaths that they're not shallow breaths, that they are deep, because you're inhaling oxygen or releasing carbon dioxide, and it actually, that air that you're inhaling goes all the way down to your lungs and into your bloodstream. And so you want to make sure that you're taking good deep breaths so that that whole process goes through and continues. With my clients, I talk to them and help them practice some sort of deep breathing strategies, not just during stress, but just in any throughout in the morning, midday, and nighttime. This helps you continue to connect to that cortex and make sure it's open. It also helps bring out spontaneous information. The second area, along with relaxation, that breathing, is gratitude and appreciation. I know I've worked in different organizations where people don't appreciate their staff, or there's that lack of appreciation. A lot of research has shown, I mean, Gallup for years, that the number one reward that people really like and appreciate is the appreciation. They want to know that they've done a great job. And gratitude as well. It's important during our turbulence that we are experiencing here on earth, that we, at the top of our minds, we are grateful. We are, when we express simple things like, a home, running water. So a lot of things that may be simple, or safety, are you grateful for? I know I always say in Atlanta, because I live in Atlanta with all this traffic. I'm grateful to, have a safe, reliable vehicle, and I'm grateful for all the safe drivers around me. So it's important to have that gratitude and that mindset and appreciation at the top of your mind. Combined with deep breathing throughout the day, gratitude, appreciation, is mindfulness. Mindfulness is something that really became more popular and current during COVID, because people were just saying, what is going on? How do I relax and wind down? Or how do I manage this stress that I'm going through, or that I see other people going through? And mindfulness is really, really that. It's focusing on the present, and being present. Thoughts concern the present. So that's not worrying about what happened last week or what may happen tomorrow and it hasn't even come yet. It's just focusing on the now. And there are many different things that people are doing, such as cloud gazing or the breathing. Deep breathing is a form of mindfulness. um, Journaling. So anything to remove any kind of stress or anxiety from your mind and thoughts is important. And that also opens up that creative thinking and spontaneous thoughts as well. And I see someone here also says you tell your daughter to take deep breaths. Yes, that's important too in schools, for our children and for our families. And before we really speak a word, or we say anything, it's very key to take those deep breaths. All right. So that's the first area of just relaxing, before we move to anything. And the second thing is knowing our triggers. I know when I talk to people before this session, there are a combination of people in this session. One is people who are looking for suggestions about for themselves, and the second group of people is people who are looking for suggestions and ideas for their staff. And the second area is huge. It's like really huge. It can really move us from being anxious to curious, which is like knowing our triggers. What are our triggers, and how can we limit those triggers so we can quickly move from anxious to curious. So it's key to identify and know what your triggers are before you even have conversations with people. And a lot of times, you know your triggers by past experiences or your important values. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's important to think about and jot down or write down, especially if you are in having some difficult challenges or situations. Write down your triggers and how can you maybe better manage those in the future. So let's quickly go over our 4 steps to managing those triggers. The first thing is we always go back, and really most of our steps is to take that deep breath. So feel yourself calm down. Um, Back to the amygdala hijack theory, we know when we're more calm, our brain is more relaxed and our cortex is more open. So it's important to take those deep breaths. And examples of some triggers could be getting negative feedback or when someone who may not have knowledge of what they already you feel they already should know, but maybe they don't know. So there's a lot of different things that trigger us to move or react in a direction that they don't want to go in. Another trigger I actually just saw this recently. Someone said that they know of other people who are triggered by other people being happy. So there are different things that can be triggered. So once we know those triggers, we want to look at and observe, well, how does that make you feel? What are like 2 to 3 key words? Is it furious, irritated, afraid? You want to just kind of speak that out. How does that make you feel? And where is that pain point in your body? Do you get headaches? Some people get migraines or pressure in their stomach. What is that? And also notice, well, what do you say? What do you say to yourself or what do you say to others? Let's say the person getting the negative feedback can go back to their coworkers and just talk bad about their manager, or they may become argumentative with their manager. So you want to know beforehand, what are some of those triggers and what are you likely to do? This is very key. I want to notice is this chart of feelings because a lot of people or that I've worked with have difficulty saying or mentioning that particular feeling that they have. So that's definitely important. Once we have identified our trigger, observe how we made it feel. And I also want to mention when we observe it from a mindful point of view. And that mindful point of view is, focus on that present and not non judgmental. This is just how I feel. This is it. This is it. All right. And then the third step is to really tell your story. What is your story? How did you get there? For example, it could be getting that negative feedback. You may have some feelings that I'm not good enough for this job, or you may have those um, feelings that my manager doesn't communicate well and her style is horrible. And so we want to think through what's the story. And the last part is, well, how can this be resolved differently? How can this be resolved in a way that hasn't been resolved in the past when you've had this particular trigger? Think about it, and sometimes it requires help with getting more education or information or revamping your skills. Sometimes it requires a private conversation. Sometimes it requires therapy. Think I need to take this further because these are some childhood issues that I'm going through. There are a lot of different strategies that you can focus on because remember, we're living in a VUCA world. we don't have time to stop and be halted by some of the triggers that we may have. As we know, things are going fast and they go really fast. All right. So the third step is to clarify your purpose and values. And we talked about this a little, we talked about values when you identify your triggers. I had a client once before who was totally triggered by people who had low integrity that she worked with, and it actually happened to be her manager, and so she really had some difficult time with that whole relationship with her manager. And it's important to clarify and know your values and how are they impacting your relationships with people at work and also people in your personal life, and why this that explains why you do what you do and why you focus on what you focus on because of your important core values. The next thing is knowing your purpose. Everyone's purpose is not their job, and your purpose at some point, a lot of people's purpose can or cannot link to their job. But whether or not it links to your job or it doesn't is definitely key to know your purpose and take steps to that particular in that direction each day or every other day to make sure you're guided by your true purpose. That helps people in a VUCA world because you're guided by who you are, you're guided by your values. You can make linkages from with your purpose and values to your organizational values, and you can do more of what you may like within your organization. A lot of research has shown that a person who is more purpose oriented and focused is more happy, and we definitely need that within this time. All right. So we talked about our purpose, identifying triggers, helping calm down the mind. So we wanted to. We're in a relaxed state. We're calm. We're managing our emotions. Is now in this Google world. How do we communicate and what do we say? And there are three keys, and most people on this call know and have probably seen this in some degree of communicating with empathy, listening, actively listening, and communicating with candor. And so these are things or keys that is not as easy to be an assertive communicator sometimes. Is sometimes that's not natural for a lot of people. And so we'll just review general steps to help you communicate in whether you're a leader or an employee of an organization or communicating with your family. And the first is empathy. There's a lot going on in the world. We talked about the COVID and the changing demographics and organizations and changing technologies. But now, after COVID, it just has been a widespread of people who feel like they haven't been included within society, within different groups. And it's important to be inclusive, and also so to have empathy for people who are different from you. And that's a struggle for a lot of people. Um, but it is important to practice that, especially if that's something that and recommend that maybe your staff members practice seeing people in a different light. And we can start and get better or improve being more empathetic is through starting with mindfulness, taking that deep breaths and mindful clearing our minds and to see different people's perspectives differently, and respect people for their different perspectives and who they are and their challenges and struggles that have led them to where they are. Being an active listener is huge as well. And being an active listener, we have our cell phones, we have these devices, we're always distracted. And so it's important to really pay attention when we are paying attention at work, at home, or really wherever we go, and let go of some of those distractors and listen without judgment. There again, we go back to that mindfulness, creating a mindfulness way of life. Of when people talk, we not only hear the words that they are speaking, but we are really hearing that message. And as an active listener, you pay attention, listen without judgment, and reflect to make sure that your message, you have the correct message. And to summarize, and then we respond. One important key area within this VUCA world is communicating with candor. We don't have time to really communicate in different ways. It's important to care about a person, to have empathy. However, it's important in many situations to just be direct. And so we'll talk about communicating with candor, and then I'll give you an example. Here is a very popular model that has gone around that looks at four different areas or ways that people communicate. And some people are, I'll start with aggression, is, communicating and embarrassing someone. Like, look, his fly is down, or um, saying something very embarrassing about a person. That's not very good communication. And saying nothing but worried about your feelings. It's another way that people may communicate. And also say nothing and worried about the other person's feelings. So we want to be empathetic, but we want to be clear thinkers. We want to be feelers and thinkers at the same time. So if you see someone, you want to say it. You see what's going on. You see maybe a challenge that may be going on. So instead of not saying anything about a person's zipper being down, you want to say, in a go to a private location or somewhere and just say your zipper's down. So it's important to let's move this to a different perspective. Um, or a more broader perspective. It's important to communicate. You explain what the situation, you explain the behavior you observed and the impact of that behavior. So here is an example. Let's say, for example, you're a manager and you are giving some positive feedback to someone. And this could go both ways, positive or corrective active feedback, because it's important to do both. So you want to start always with communicating with the positive. Then you communicate, well, what's the situation? What happened? So, Dave, you conducted 10 presentations over the last 10 months. However, you notice that something happened more recently. So that's why you kind of go, and that's when we go in the past and think through, well, what happens? And you see the positive that every presentation resulted into a new sale. And as a result of this, we're meeting our targets. So these are conversations you can have with people, with with staff, or with family. You always want to always start with the positive, explain the situation, and what did you observe, and what was that impact. So the last step in creating your best self in turbulent times is building better routines. So it's important, as we know, a lot of times we're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to sort out different things. I've created a journal, Activate Your Best, that has a section in it, and I will put the link um, on my website, and I'll put it in the LinkedIn chat box. But you want to make sure that you have a work life balance. I know it's not just about going to work every day, focusing on work and not having any fun, or focusing on those stressors or turbulence. I think with COVID, it really opened up a lot of people's thoughts. People are working from home, they're enjoying certain things, enjoying their families or different things. But it's important to living in this turbulent world is to create a list of things that you're going to do to help prepare you for the day, and also to help prepare for fun as well. And so one section in this journal is different activities that people can participate in the morning and the midday and at nighttime to help them manage through change and to create a routine. For example, you could, in the morning, you could practice mindfulness, 20-minute exercise. And it's important when writing these things down is that you focus on what is it that you're maybe struggling with, or that you're not used to doing, or you need to do to get better. And then you keep doing it for over a period of time, then you create a habit. And those habits can be ongoing and really can change the whole your whole life. All right. So it's important as leaders, as parents, as individual contributors, for all of us to model healthy behavior. What should I do? Say, how should I act? How can we continue to really help this world evolve and grow? As we all know, it's growing really at a fast rate. So it's important to model healthy behavior. All right. So I'm going to see, are there any more messages in the chat box? Oh, I see Goda loves having a morning routine too. Yes, it's definitely important every day to have some sort of routines. Okay. Well, I this ends our presentation. I want to thank you for attending this session. A little bit more information about me. Yeah, if you are interested in learning more about our group coaching sessions, go to activateyourbest.com. We provide different group coaching and individual coaching and training in organizations to help employees and leaders continue to activate their best selves and meet the needs of the organization. All right. So if there aren't any more questions, we will end this call. I want to thank everyone who has participated. And if you're on LinkedIn, you have any questions, you can email me or write messages in the chat box. But thank you.